Okay, our guest featured speaker today is Marcela White. She wears a couple of things about Marcela. One, she grew up, she's from Romania originally, was born and raised in Romania. First 20 years of her life behind the Iron Curtain, living under socialist tyranny. The dictator Nicolae Ceausescu, who made his last speech to the nation in 1989 and also was executed on television, live television in 1989. Neil, her husband, was in the Air Force at that time in Germany, and feeling inclined to participate in some relief activities. There was a connection that happened. Maybe they'll tell the story about it. I don't tell too much. But just imagine, look at all the guys in this room. Imagine it being 700 people, about half of them men, and when you have the wedding in Romania at the church, at a big church, that part of the protocol is Neil's trapped at the back, only one door, and he's trapped at the back, and part of the protocol is to kiss everyone, man and woman, not once, but twice on each cheek. So they can tell a little about whatever it is they're going to tell about. Marcela is going to speak for about 20 to 30 minutes, is what I suggested, and then the rest of the time for Q&A, a similar amount of time for Q&A. So whatever questions you have about socialist tyranny in her experience and in general, and maybe in comparison to things that are happening in the United States that you want to ask about, be thinking about that. And please welcome Marcela White.
Thank you, Clay, for inviting me to speak today. If I need to slow down or if you cannot understand me, just let me know and I'll do my best.
I'm going to turn you up a little bit.
How's this?
Great.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. So anyway, Clay and Melanie have been really great hosts to us. They have been taking care of all our needs and introduced us to new friends. Thank you, Mara, too. Very, very nice to see you again. So I hope their efforts are justified. I would like to let you know that I do not like to speak in public. This is something I just do not like to do. But at this point, I think it's time for all of us to get out of our comfort zone and do something and get the country back where our founding fathers. On the positive side, Neil is a great public speaker. He is a teacher. He was a professor at university in Pittsburgh, so he is really good at this. So I think he'll make up for me where I lack. So anyway, and I just have a better story than he does. I spent the first 21 years of my life in behind the Iron Curtain, like Clay said, in the Socialist Republic of Romania, in socialist government. We had a tyrant. He was brutal. His name was Nicolae Ceausescu, and he did not start that way. They never do. Just like Mussolini, Hitler, Stalin, Castro, they all come on the scene pretending they're on the side of the people and they're fighting for the people. And there's a really good quote that I'd like to share with you. The people have always some champion whom they set over them and nurse into greatness. This and no other is the root from which a tyrant springs. When he first appears, he is a protector. Plato said that. I think it applies. As a child, I remember feeling so hopeless. We were just cut off from all the world. Nobody knew what was going on. We didn't know what was going on inside. We had borders, and unlike America, ours were secure, patrolled. Nobody came in, nobody went out, or very few actually. We had the government, so anyway, we're cut off from everything, and all the decisions were basically made for us. We had government education, government healthcare, government housing, government utilities, no free speech whatsoever. We didn't have any guns. We had tremendous debt, socialist media, propaganda, and the leadership profited from all of it. So My parents and grandparents were industrious, hardworking people, so they accumulated some wealth, some land, they had property, livestock, they were in the country. And however, the government tried to convince the have-nots that this is not fair. So they were going to do something about that. So they sent out a couple of guys dressed in nice suits, really nice, and they came to my great-grandfather's house. And they said, I think it's a really good idea to give up all your land, well, most of your land and the livestock and whatever you own, so everybody can have access to that, because there's so many people who don't have it. And my great-grandfather had the audacity to say, no, I don't think so. I'll just keep it. This is what I'm going to leave to my family, to my children, my grandchildren, and I'd like to keep it. Well, they tried it several times, and finally they had a meeting one time, and when he came home, he was all black and blue and bruised. And a few days later, government thugs came over, and right in front of his eyes, they took livestock, they took the tools to work the land. Basically, they took everything they wanted, and most of his land. Of course, they left a little bit of land in the back of his yard, just for basic for the garden, basically. I cannot imagine his pain, seeing all his hard work just walking out of his yard. I mean, the best horses, had a nice house. He was really working hard. And the sad part is that the people who are in charge now were the people who are lazy, who are not doing anything before. So again, it was upside down. And the biggest problem is that he could do nothing about those thugs just coming to get his stuff. That he had no guns, no way to protect himself. So I still don't know how he lived with that. And it was all redistributed. And it was all in the name of the common good, and it was equality. Oh, it's all rhetoric anyway. They had quotas they had to produce, just basic stuff, milk, butter, eggs, whatever, even feathers. So anyway, if you didn't give the government how much they think you should give them, they would basically came and take whatever they wanted from you. They would just come to your house and just take it. And you would basically, you would sell it to the government, but the price was so low, the price they were willing to pay, that it was basically a donation to the state. So, but my great-grandfather was a little bit more fortunate than most of other people. Others got relocated to the south, and some came back, some never did. Or they were put in a labor camp, or even worse, killed, executed. And all because they had the audacity to say that they would like to keep everything they had.
Okay.
So, when I was a kid, I really remember watching on TV Woody Woodpecker, Tom and Jerry, Chip and Dale, all those good old cartoons. But it was only on Saturday and Sunday, and they would only broadcast it for like 10 or 20 minutes. So let's say we start watching the Snow White or Aristocats. Well, you had to wait, you watched it 10 or 20 minutes, and you had to wait until next Saturday to finish it. So kids over here, they don't know how blessed they are. So, we even had other movies like Westerns, like Dallas. I actually know who JR is and all those guys, which, I still enjoy that show. And that was just in between propaganda and social media and all that. It was all controlled by the state, the TV, the radio stations. Every time Ceausescu went to visit another communist country, he was really good friends with those guys, including Iran and all those guys over there. He came home with a borrowed idea. So whenever he came home, he knew something was going to change. It was never for the good. And as a kid, of course, I didn't like him taking my cartoons away, but he did. So he shut down, I think it was in the 80s, he shut down all the local radio stations, and then we had 2 hours of TV, one channel, like from 6 to 8, and that's all you got. You turn it on, there's nothing on. And most of that was basically just socialist propaganda telling us how great his social programs are, and how great he is, and we just, we'll be forced to just sing praises to him, and it was just, not real. If you were caught with a VCR, you'd go to jail for that. And I remember when we were teenagers, the only way to watch Christian movies was to go to somebody's house who had, I think, one VCR, I don't know, probably just one in a, for every million people, I don't know how many there were, but very few. And we had to go to somebody's house, we had to close all the blinds, make sure there are blackout curtains, and do not turn the sound up very much, because somebody happened to hear you, they would call the secret police, and you'd go to jail, of course. But they did allow a certain amount of news in there, but it was basically, our neighbors, the Russians or the East Germans or, something like that. They didn't want us to know anything about the West, and that's what we really wanted to know about. I mean, we heard, my dad introduced me to a radio station, which that was kind of like our Fox News. It was called Radio Free Europe, and that's where we heard a man say, government is not the solution to the problem. Government is the problem. And man is not free unless the government is limited. And what he was saying did not match with what we saw on our TV. So basically we were just told to just mind our own business and just not concern ourselves with what's outside the borders. They will take care of us. They'll make sure that they keep those evil Americans away from us. And you were always the bad guys. And Radio Free Europe always said that you guys had more than one job. You could work more than one job, which in Romania that was unheard of. You can buy stuff on sale, which was like, what was that? And yet you had all the freedoms to make the choices, and you're the bad guy. So I don't use that one. I'll bring another one. So President Reagan said it so well. Socialists ignore the side of the man that is spirit. They can provide you with shelter. They fill your belly with bacon and beans, treat you when you're ill. All the things guaranteed to a prisoner or a slave. They don't understand that we also dream. And all we wanted is just to have some freedom to make our own choices. School, there's no school choice. I mean, no, we don't even know what homeschooling was, private school. There's no such thing in Romania. It was basically government schools. They would take your children away when they were about 4 years old. And for the first 3 years, they would go to kindergarten, different groups. And when you're 7, you were supposed to go to elementary. It was from 1st to 8th grade, and the high school was 9 through 12. And it was basically indoctrination. They rewrote the history. The kids who were left-handed were not allowed to write, to use their left hand to write. They were forced to write with their right hand. You couldn't say anything. You had to look at his picture. He had a picture in every single classroom and every government building, and it was up there, and we had to sing the hymn, and we had to sing praises to him all the time. We don't like it, but what choice did we have? And also, so anyway, he really wanted us to worship him. He wanted to be in place of God, and being a Christian, that was a threat to him because we were not able to be manipulated. So he didn't like it. That basically, the Pentecostals and Baptists and just stuff like that was the Christians. So we had some Orthodox people there. They had no problem with them because they just didn't feel like they were a threat. But they would tear down the monasteries and the churches like no other time. So he decided to start massive projects like the Danube Canal and build a palace which had about 6,000 rooms, which he never got to use because he got overthrown. But this was very expensive. So he decided to borrow money from foreign countries, about $13 billion, and it was the best way to pay it back. Well, of course, you have to do, take it from your citizens. And what he started to do is he started to heavily export everything. So Romania is a rich country. I mean, we have all kinds of stuff. We're making things, good industry, but he would export everything. Neil, do you want to share your story about that?
when I first drove into Romania, the very first time, I took leave from the military, and I had seen the execution of Ceausescu on television. We knew that it was very dangerous going down there, but a group from the church that I was attending, we ended up loading up some vehicles full of food, clothing, medicinal supplies, Christian literature, Bibles, and we got to the border, and they asked us where they were going. First, they asked to see what was in our vehicles, and we showed them. And their eyes lit up because they saw all these things that they wanted. And then second, they wanted to know where we were going. Well, we knew that we could not just go in and just hand it out on the streets because the gypsies are ruthless over in Romania. Very, very mean individuals. They would sell it on the black market. They go as far as to disfigure their children on purpose, break their children's arms and set them back in a grotesque manner so they can sit their children by the side of the road and beg. That's how ruthless they are. So we knew that we needed to take these items to a church, somewhere that could distribute it in a more fair and equitable manner to those that really needed it. And so when we got to actually Marcela's church, we were unloading all these things. And I took a crate of apples and I handed them down to an individual. And several of them there said, "Oh, these are our apples." Their eyes lit up. And I said, "Yes, they're your apples." And they said, "These are our apples."
Wow.
And I said, "Yes, you can have them. They're for you." And they said, "No, these are our apples." And it finally dawned on us what they were saying. These apples had been produced in their very community and stolen from them and exported to Germany to pay for the lavish lifestyle and the government and all the hands that were dipping into the people's productivity.
I remember when I was about 9 or so, things started to just click a little bit. I realized how much control the government had over us, how they were telling us what to do and how to do it. And one of the biggest surprises for me was the rationing. He started to ration our food. He was really worried that we would get obese, so he had to do something about that. So when I hear in New York that you cannot buy a big drink, I mean, that has socialism written all over it, so, you know, I'll stop at that. But empty shells, I mean, that was a common sight in the 80s. He would export everything. If you really want to, you know, see a picture, think about when I hear on the news that we'll have a hurricane or a big storm. Everybody goes to the store and buys everything. The shelves are empty. That was every day for us, basically. Every once in a while, they would just bring stuff in, which most of that was kept by the people who were there. And if there was if you just happened to go to market or anywhere, if you saw a big bunch of people, and I'm not talking about line like, you know, one file. I mean, you know, 5, 6 lines in one place. You knew something came to the store, and you just, you know, sit at the back of the line and ask what they're selling, and hope you'll get some. Sometimes you spend hours in there, get nothing, because they would only sell one thing, like one piece of bread, one loaf of bread, and they would only give one, so more people would get it. So you just, you know, go back in line after, you know, 200 or 300 people and hope they'll have another one. If they ran out right before your turn came, guess what? You just wasted several hours. So that was just, you know, normal life for us. My mom would get up early in the morning and go buy bread, and we're just hoping that, you know, she comes back with something. So also there's no flour in the store. You couldn't make bread, and, you know, you couldn't find the store, so you were just kind of, you know, between a rock and a hard place, really. Also the electricity was rationed, because we're supposed to save as much as possible. And they would come in your house and they would see how many family members you have. It doesn't matter how big your house was, how many family members you have, and they would go by that. They give you a ration, how much they think you should be using, and if you went over that, they would just make it so much more expensive, everything you used over. Natural gas, that's how most people heated their homes. And you know how harsh the winters are in Europe, in Russia. If you use over what you're supposed to, they would just shut it off. They wouldn't care if you'd freeze. And we had a home, so it wasn't quite as bad, but the people who they brought from the country, from the villages, and they built those, we call them blocks. They are cement, they are cold. They would just basically trap those people in there, and no heat, no water sometimes. I mean, coming home and turning the switch on and nothing happens. I was like, okay, well, this is one of those nights that, we're saving again. So blackouts were just regular for us, Also, people didn't have very many cars because, for one thing, they were expensive. We had one model that was called Dacia. It's made in Romania, and they were very expensive for one thing. And then you had to put your name on the list. It was a long list, a long waiting time to buy one. And then there was really no point in having one because they rationed the fuel, so you couldn't go anywhere anyway. So. He also, like I was saying, he started to build a massive project. He made his plans really early on when he got elected. And in 1967, the Communist Party decided that the population of Romania should increase from 23 million to 30 million. So, of course, he banned contraceptives, and he had the secret police really get into your business, especially women. They had to, go to the doctor every month. They would be monitored every month, and very, very intrusive, very inappropriate. But the moms who had 5 children or more, they got considerable benefits. So getting paid to have kids, basically. And then the ones who had 10 or more, they were called patriotic moms. And nobody really wanted that title, but what can you do? And that was really, really sad because people had those children, but they could not support them, so they had to abandon them, and the orphanages were full. Do you want to tell your story about the orphanage? I have never been inside the orphanage because they tried to keep them, so I didn't even know there's one in my city, but Neil actually went to one, so let me...
Once we got through the border, by the way, let me tell you real quick, standing there at the border with this guard, who you could tell who in the past had sided with Ceausescu and had helped suppress any revolt. Now, when he saw the tide was turning, had hastily ripped his communist patch off of his arm to say that he's with the people now. Okay, he stood there, and when we told him that we were going to a church, he said, "Ah, you are a Christian?" And we said, "Yes." He took his AK-47 off of his shoulder. He leveled it at us. Now, I mean, this was a very unknown time. We were venturing into territory that nobody had been into for so long. And we had no idea what was coming next. And he said, "Ceausescu." And he made the noise with his mouth. And he said, "Christians." I said, "Okay, thanks, we'll be going now." The very first place that we went, before we could get to Baimara, because that's where she's from, and it's just south of the Ukrainian border, we went to a larger city named Oradea. And the very first place we went was to an orphanage. Humane Society animals have it better than these children. Because of his decree to increase the drone population, the producers, these women, they did not have the resources to take care of these children. And these children were in cribs that were about a quarter of the size of our cribs. Metal, hard, cold cribs. And there were about 30 to 1 worker. And we walked in, and these children, I didn't know what I was seeing at first, because some of them were old enough to sit up, and they had ticks. Every one of them, they were undulating back and forth in their cribs. And my first assumption was these children were the social outcasts. These were the ones that had some sort of mental deficiency or some physical deficiency. And the workers told us, no, what they're doing is they remember from when they were born, they remember that time early on when somebody helped them. Somebody rocked them. And there's nobody to do it now. And so they do it themselves.
We had free government health care. You could not choose your doctor, one was assigned to you. And our say would be today, if you don't like your doctor, you can keep him anyway, we don't care. There's no schedule, you would just basically show up to the place and just wait your place in line, and he would see when he was ready to see you. And then if you decide you need some lab work or send you to a specialist, you would go to a big hospital where you would have to wait even in longer lines. It was so, the lights were dim, people were just waiting on the floor because they would come early and they would still be tired, so they wanted to group the place in line, so they came really early. So that's not a good place to be. Nothing was disposable. Everything was, they sterilized everything, including, what do you call those things? Tongue depressors. So I'm sorry to mess up your meal. Do you want to tell your story? Yes, I love it.
What she said is this is after the revolution. When we got married, I tried to do everything I could beforehand, going down into this unknown country. Number one, all of our letters had to be read by the OSI. I was still in the military, and each time I would take leave, anytime I had to report back to the military to tell them what had happened, etc. But all of my documentation had to be notarized in English, German, Hungarian, and Romanian. Try to find a notary public that speaks all those languages. Well, I did that. And I did everything I could to prepare, because I had to marry Marcela in the country to bring her out of the country. And so one of the things that I did is I had seen the atrocious health care, the inadequacy of their health care, and I didn't want to be any part of that. Can you say Obamacare? So I took the necessary steps. I got my blood drawn. I did everything I could in Germany, and I got it notarized, and I went down there. However, they wanted their piece of the pie. And so we ended up having to go and get my blood drawn from the state healthcare system. Number one, her mother had to get up way earlier than we did, and her mother went and reserved a place in line for us, and she greased the wheels with some bribes. And Marcela and I followed later, and when we got there, imagine this long hospital corridor, and there's people, so many people in line. They're sitting on the floor with their backs against their walls, with their feet stuck out in the aisle, and there's just a very small space for you to step over and move between people's legs and their belongings. And maybe one or two flickering fluorescent lights all the way down this corridor, because the lights were burnt out and they didn't have any more. And so I finally got in to see a doctor to draw my blood, and this simple procedure became a nightmare. The needle that they had used, or that they used, had been used so many times. It was bent. It was dull. And it was like driving a 1/4-inch nail into my arm. When I was done, I had a bruise starting right here, all the way up to here. My entire arm was bruised, and I could hardly use it for the next several days from the simple procedure of getting my blood drawn.
Let me tell you more about that. When Neil and I got married, he was an adrenaline junkie, and he still is, really. He wanted someone to go do all those crazy things with him, like rock climbing and swimming and skating and skiing, and I have never done any of those things. It was because the socialist healthcare. Now let me explain. When my grandmother was in her 20s, she broke her leg riding a bike. And something as simple as fixing that here in America turned out to be a nightmare, and it crippled her for life. So my parents tried to limit those activities that would just have the same result. I never got, growing up, I never got to roller skate or ice skate. I never rode a bike. I never drove a car. So just basic walked everywhere, took the bus. So, yes, so anyway, now he taught me everything I know. All those things I've never done before and more, so it's fun. Let's see. So this is basically what you have forward to the socialist healthcare. And it makes me so angry that you have, I'm just going to say it, Obamacare. You have something that, you are forced to buy, whether, it doesn't mean that you don't want it, you don't need it, or you don't like it, or you cannot afford it. You have to buy it. And I found a quote by Robert Heinlein. It says, "There's no worse tyranny than to force a man to pay for what he does not want, merely because it's good for him." That's Obamacare, right? I never imagined that in 2016 we'll have to be so careful, and I'll see before my very eyes the same things I saw in Romania. I mean, 25 years later, and we have to deal with the same things we had to do back then. But there's always a good part. Ronald Reagan, your president, said the words that are so meaningful to me and to all of us from Eastern Europe when he gave his Brandenburg address at the speech at the Berlin Wall. He said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." And that just resonates with me, and that's when everything started to happen. And as you know, I don't know if any of you know, but his speechwriters did not want Reagan to say that because it was not politically correct. It was going to cause trouble. And that's something to be said. Because he said those words, I think people had hope, and we heard them on Radio Free Europe. So our hopes, things were never the same. That speech actually made communism fall, and I cannot thank him enough for doing that. The only problem is that we're back there again, except the communism is here, socialism is here. And I didn't know what to do at the beginning. I was so frustrated with all these people saying, and I didn't to bash anybody, but I hear a lot of Christians saying, "Oh, I'm not going to vote, it's not my place to vote, this is my temporary home on the earth." So what? While you're here, vote. It's the right thing to do. It's your responsibility. It's your duty to vote as an American citizen. I'm actually going to take my American citizenship and hopefully vote for the first time next year. So I think we all need to get involved. And somebody actually told me that as a Christian I should not be involved in politics. Somebody really close to me in Romania. And I thought, how can you say that? I mean, you out of all people should know because you lived in it. You know how the government can tell you not to say God, not to pray to God. In churches, every fourth person was an informer. I mean, all the population. So how can you say that? And they know everything about you. But then I thought, I can see her point because in Romania there's no such thing as elections. Everything was just decided for you basically. And I think it's time to rise up and just do something, you know, whether it's just vote or talk to your neighbor, just kind of educate yourself because I think we've gone so far from what this country intended to be. And socialism fell in all the other countries. What makes people think it's going to work here? You know, it just doesn't. It's the same pattern that everybody's using, and it has the same result every time. The language we're using today, it is so upside down. I cannot imagine how people get away with that. The Affordable Care Act. There's nothing affordable about that. Planned Parenthood. That's basically murder. It's infanticide. The ethics bill that was on the ballot last year, issue number 3, it's unethic, if anything. the gun control. It's basically, to confiscate our guns so we would be defenseless and disarmed. And I have seen that in Romania many times when everybody tried to rise up and just had dare to ask for human rights, for basic, human rights. They would have Ceausescu would have the military and just shoot them. I mean, just that simple. So we need our guns. We need to keep our guns. And anyway, use them. And I cannot believe this is all happening here and now. So you remember all the scandals that we had with IRS, with SNA, and let me get you another piece of the puzzle. They knew everything about us. Somehow we thought, well, they have files on each one of us. It turns out that was the rumor. That's what they wanted us to think. So we'll be afraid. Not that many people had files, but they kept us in check. And we used to have phones, just regular phones, and they were able to listen to our conversations. And not just that, but record them and store them. So you tell me NSA is not listening? Well, maybe not. But and then that was not enough because they could only hear what you're saying while you're on the phone. Once you hung up, that was it. So he decided to come up with better technology, which he stole from you guys, obviously. Those new phones were mandatory. And the good thing about that was for them that they could listen to everything that was going on in the house, whether you're on the phone or not. It turns out they had microphones in vases in restaurants, in ashtrays, even in plugins, electrical plugins. So they knew everything. There were a lot of offices, secret police office. That's all they did. Just listen to people and, target a few and just go with it. So you don't know how blessed you are to live in a constitutional republic. It's a blessing. We are losing our liberties faster than ever before under the pretense of security. And we're going to lose both. 3 weeks ago, my husband had lost 23-year career with a big company. And that was because he expressed his personal opinion at work. He expressed his opinion on politics at work. Nothing untrue. He just said, hey, this is my opinion. Well, he got terminated. So that was 3 weeks ago, and we're still in shock. We cannot believe this is happening to us. I mean, you hear things happen to other people, but to actually see it firsthand like that, it's a little bit too close to home. So again, I'd say we need to vote, we need to get involved, and I guess because of my background, I think I picked my candidate really early on, and I'll just tell you, it's Ted Cruz. Yay! And Ted Cruz, and my reason for that is his father grew up in socialist Cuba just like I did, so I have a really strong connection with him. I know he taught his son to recognize socialism and taught him how bad that is, and that's what they discussed all the time in around the dinner table. So and that's what we do with our kids. So I know my kids will recognize that, and I know Ted will recognize that. Will keep us away from that. He is a constitutionalist, all 100%. He is the cornerstone for him is the Constitution and the Scriptures. I mean, you go by those two things, all the problems are going to be gone. I mean, what more do we need? Amen. So anyway, other people are not quite as passionate about him, but like I said, because of my background, that's just, he is by far number one. And I think he will reverse the damage done to this country. He's done it before. I'd like for you to say a few things about him.
Marcela is limited to some of the things that she can say when it comes to the campaign, so she can speak about herself. Things that I would like to share about this candidate. He memorized the Constitution when he was 13 years old. He was part of a group of kids, the constitutional corroborators. And he would actually go to venues where someone was speaking, and they would stand over in the corner and have a dry erase board or a chalkboard up, and they would write the Constitution by hand while the speaker was presenting the topic. He has argued more cases to the Supreme Court than any other. He clerked for Chief Justice William Rehnquist. He's won these cases in defense of constitutional rights. We watched Clay last night in the Sternbergs. We enjoyed watching Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Jimmy Stewart. And I kind of feel like him because after a 23-year storied career, for the first time in my life, I'm unemployed because I spoke about politics in the workplace. Our company was so fearful of this administration that they think I put them at risk.
Oh, wow.
And so, but I want to share a story. Y'all remember the government shutdown where they closed off the monuments. The World War II veterans couldn't go to the monument. They put up the orange barriers so that you couldn't even pull off the road to see the Mount Rushmore. They did all these things that actually cost more money had they just left it alone. Well, in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, he's painted as the villain. Well, Ted Cruz was painted as a villain when the shutdown occurred. And the details, some of you may know the details. I'll take just a minute to share it. The details were Obama wanted a clean bill to raise the debt ceiling. Now, most conservatives go to Washington campaigning that they are going to reduce our debt, that they are going to control spending. Well, Boehner in the House, they gave it to him. They just caved and gave it to him. And so now it's gone to the Senate, and Ted Cruz sees this is an opportunity. We have the majority. We can get some things that we want. We can attach some conditions to raising the debt ceiling. We can have a million, so many millions cut from this program. We can defund this program. We can cut from here, cut from there. However, that didn't happen. What happened was the Senate Majority Leader gathered them in a room. And the rules of the Senate are, in order to raise the debt ceiling, there must be 60 votes. That's a Senate rule. So he gathered them in a room. The Democrats only had 55 in the Senate. Not votes, just 55 Democrats. So there's no way they could get this unless some conservatives crossed the aisle, exposing them to be not conservative. So Mitch McConnell gathers them in a room and he says, here's what we're going to do. It takes a unanimous vote to do this. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to change the Senate rules to raise the debt ceiling to 50 votes. And we can all go home, back to our constituency. He didn't say this, but that was the intention. They can all go back to their homes, their constituency, and say, I didn't vote to raise the debt ceiling. I did what you had me go to Washington to do. And so one man stood up in that room, and I quote, said, there is no universe in which I can consent to that. That man was Ted Cruz, and he was vilified for that. Vilified. He has been fighting the battle longer than any other candidate that's out there. Any of these others that have their posturing and blustering, this man has a moral compass. The Constitution and the Scriptures. Others who have a lot of rhetoric out there, they don't have a compass. Their compass is opportunistic. They are going to go the winds of the political world. They're going to blow with those winds. Ted Cruz is always going to come back to the Constitution and the Scriptures.
Wow.
Okay, I'd like to close was just one statement. Rafael Cruz, Ted Cruz's dad, said when we were oppressed in Cuba, we had a place to go to. If this happens here, where do we go? We have no place to go. America is a noble country, is the best country on earth. That's why everybody wants to come here. I think we should blend in and not expect you guys to adapt to us. I think we need to just, respect the language and respect your custom. And I never would have imagined that I'll be involved in politics, especially American politics, which to me it's such a blessing. I cannot believe I got this chance. And I'm actually the political coordinator for Ted Cruz because I believe in him. And most people were telling me at the beginning, because I picked him off so early on, it was just so easy for me. They said, oh, he's not electable, why are we wasting your time? And I said, I don't care, it doesn't matter. This is who I believe in, this is the closest one I can agree with. We have the same standards. This is my witness to God. He stands for the scriptures, he stands for what's right. And this is my job, and look how well he's doing in Iowa and other places like that. So anyway, I don't care what people say, we'll try to always do the right thing by the scriptures. And I'm just blessed to be here. Thank you so much for listening to my story.
Okay, we have about 25 minutes for Q&A. So who would be first? And I don't know if I can drag this all the way over there. Would you mind coming far away? Behind you. Behind you?
Right around.
Okay.
We're blessed to have you.
Here we are.
Okay,
Say who you are. If you don't.
yeah, my name's John Flores. I'm very familiar with Germany. My wife is from Germany. One thing, it seemed to me, Romania was relatively liberal compared to East Germany. One thing, in East Germany, only the elites were allowed to learn English, but everybody had to learn Russian. Because of course the Germans in East Germany, they could watch West German television, so they could see that there was another world, right? Because although, I wanted to ask you, yeah, because you could watch Western cartoons, that would never be allowed in East Germany.
Well, I guess I'm not involved.
But the question I have is, did you have to learn Russian?
No.
And when did you learn English, or how did you learn English?
Romania was kind of go with the wind. It depends on who was in power and who actually controlled Romania. So anyway, there was a time when my grandparents and my parents were young, when Russian and German were the other two languages to learn. Now, later on, probably 70s, 80s, they changed to French and English. And actually, I took French in second grade. I loved it. English, not so much. And another reason why I didn't really like it is because I thought I would never use it, because you could not find an English dictionary anywhere in the country. I mean, it's just not allowed. You couldn't find books in English. You couldn't have, of course, there's no internet. So basically, and you had to give your books back. So you had no way to use the English language. So anyway, just, And then I wish I did, because I met him, I couldn't speak to him little English. So anyway, did I miss a question?
When did you learn English?
Well,
Oh, you learned it in school?
I was supposed to, but I didn't. So, actually, when Neil came to Romania in March, we were trying to speak, so we could not. And like I said, I couldn't find an English dictionary anywhere. So he sent me a Bible, one of his scriptures. It was a writer's scripture. And I took that and I compared it to my Romanian Bible and just kind of figured something out. Not all of them, I'm still trying to figure a few of them out. But basically just, comparing and, guessing. And it's kind of funny when I read my letters to him, they just so funny. But anyway, I'm still trying to learn, and, I'll get it one of these days.
You're doing well.
Thank you. Did I ask for everything? Good.
Mia, do you want to say something about English?
No, she's just being very modest because, just think what that, it shows, number one, she knew her own scriptures. And she was able to take her scriptures and take an English version and teach herself by looking at John 3:16. If she wanted to know use the word world or know what the word world meant, she could find it in John 3:16 and that's how she wrote her letters to me. She said, okay, I know I want to use this word. Let me find this word in my scriptures. And then let me go find that passage in the English version and deduce which word that is, and then I'll put that word in my letter. So she's brilliant.
Say who you are and what your question is.
Yeah, my name is Gene Balch. I think I'm getting old, I forgot my question. No, not really. I wanted to ask, when and how did your government change, and were you there when the government changed over? And what kind of government do you have now in Romania? I show my stupidity, but...
Well, actually,
Hold that thought.
I think Romania was a monarchy before, and actually they made King Michael abdicate and leave the country, and that was before my time. I think it was about 5 when Ceausescu actually came to power. No. Yes, in 74 he came to power, and he changed everything drastically. And like I said, when I was young, it wasn't so bad. He was still, letting us have, certain things. Like we had chocolate in the stores, we had soap, aspirin. By the time I was 15, 16, none of that was there. So he took our basic items and he exported them. So it got worse the older I got. Our revolution was in December '89, and right now I think the president is Johan Klaus. He's a really good guy. I do not know what party he is, but my parents are telling me he's the good guy. So anyway, the people wanted him. The real good people wanted him. So
So you have democratic elected officials?
Well, should I say that?
They don't have term limits?
Well, Ceausescu should have had term limits too, but he kept electing himself. Nobody ran against him, and everything at the local level was so corrupt that that's why this lady said to me, "You should not be involved in politics," because she knew it was so corrupt. There's the Christians, the good people, could not get involved, could not get anywhere unless they were, doing the same things they're doing. And I said, "But Mom, it's not like here. It's not like that here." Well, for the most part, there's still some good guys. So there's more hope than we had back there. That's what I'm trying to say. So, and now's the time. If you lose these elections, we're done. I'm sorry, but we're done. So.
We're gonna do it.
Nancy.
I know that a lot of Christians have fled Romania. Do you see the same things, the pattern, as I see right now here in our country, where they're doing some of the same things that they were doing in Romania, taking away our freedom as religion and taking God out of everything? And do you see some of the same patterns going on here right now that you had to in Romania, as many Christians have fled Romania?
I see so many parallels, and religious is one of them. It's gonna come to the point if we don't do something that they will not allow you to say the name of God. There's no prayer in school. In elementary school, that was from 1st to 8th grade, I was the only Christian in school. In high school, I think I had my best friend was Pentecostal, and that was about the extent of it. They were just so not popular. They would not encourage that. You were followed. Our pastor actually was a teacher, and on the side he would preach, and they said that he cannot do that, so they fired him. So yes, very much so. Like I said, it's Romania all over again when it comes to religion, to education, healthcare. I mean, press. What else? Common Core. Oh my goodness, that's indoctrination right there. So we'll say it more so we'll get myself in trouble, but it's here. It's been here for 4 years, and now it's just blatantly open. So we blatantly need to stand up and say we don't like it anymore.
Along those lines, the candidate I've chosen, there are 5 things that he says that he wants to accomplish in his presidency. 5 departments, there's a lot more than 5, but there's 5 departments that he wants to abolish during his presidency. Those departments are the Department of Education. Education belongs to the local level. To the teacher where my child is sitting in front of that teacher knows my child, knows what my child needs. I as the parent know what that child needs. My children, they've never heard of them, except by me. They don't know the Magna Carta, they don't know Jamestown, they don't know the Mayflower Compact, they don't know any of these things that I was raised believing. We do not live in the America that I grew up in. And my children, that pains me for my children. That is the point, the place education belongs locally. Okay, so the Department of Education, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Energy, the IRS.
And the EPA.
Well, the last one actually, that would be nice, but it's the Office of Housing and Urban Development. Those are the 5 that he wants to abolish during his presidency.
How is it 6 weeks? No, EPA should be abolished. Okay, now we have.
I'm gonna go Tim first, and then you, tomorrow.
Just a real quick question.
Good, you will.
Were you raised in a Christian home, and when were you saved?
And how? What if she's not yet?
Christians don't mind sharing.
I was raised in a Baptist church. I think I was saved. I got baptized when I was 18. They couldn't baptize you before that. So anyway, used to go to church every Sunday and really, love the scripture and love God. And I think that's where my roots are really. To these days, everything I do, it's it always goes to that basic. So I had really good parents. My parents were also raised in church. My grandparents were saved too. So that was my happiness right there. There's nothing else stable, nothing else you can trust. And that's why God blessed me with this man. The best thing I ever did was marry him. So it's wonderful. Let me say one more thing really quick. Ceausescu, and you're going to see the parallel on this. He was born in a peasant family, 10 kids, and when he was 11 years old, he had enough, so ran away. He went to Bucharest. And when he got there, he saw all the wealth going on, all the wealth that people had, and the carriages and nice clothes, and he thought that is not fair. We're not going to do that. So his goal in life was social justice. So anyway, and I can keep going on and on about this, but basically, just take it from the people who have it and give it to the people who do not have it, well, for whatever reason. So to me that's wrong, but anyway.
Over here first.
That was it.
Oh, we didn't get to hear it.
You can ask again.
You want to say what she asked?
I just said the 2 profound words. Can you hear me?
Here.
Well, I met her Sunday, and the most profound 2 words I heard her say were social justice. And I wanted to remind her of that. So, am I close enough?
By the way, when we leave here at 11:30, Marcella is scheduled to get with Tom Nichols for a interview. What do they call it? Something 5-minute interview thing that they'll play a few times. And so we're supposed to be over there at 11:30. No, not 11:30. 1:30. 1:30. Thank you. And also on Thursday, you heard about Dr. Jack's program with Dick Antoine on Talk of the Town, AM 1340. On Thursday, Marcella is scheduled to be on from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock for an hour with Dick Antoine on that show, so you might want to tune in on Thursday for that. And it's a call-in program, so if you want to call in and ask a question that you didn't get to ask here, you might do that. Yeah.
You can always write me or call me.
Let her go first. He'll be forever. I tried.
My reputation has preceded me. I just want to mention that I met Marcela and her husband on the AFP trip. And you've heard her speak today, and she says she's not a public speaker, but I will tell you that her passion, her words, and we became friends on Facebook. Her passion and her words are in every writing, in every word that she writes, and everything that she says. And from what you've told us today, the one thing that worries me most about our country and what happens is between our subscribing to the 2030 plan, which puts us in the world at risk with socialism and redistribution of wealth, if it goes to its extent, and what you're presenting about what Cruz is proposing, because I like that. I've been following you. Thank you for those tidbits and those good words. But I just want to commend you for what you and Neil do and tell you that if anyone needs an inspiration, you only need to become her friend on Facebook, and you'll have an inspirational message each and every day, from something from a small comment to perhaps a little longer, and she's really pretty good at her writing and her comments. Thank you very much for being here and speaking to us. I couldn't miss this one after meeting you on the AFP trip. Thank you.
Commendation, and I think no questions. So, and over here.
I'm completely for Ted Cruz and have been for the last year. I want to know what we can do in the next year. For one thing, is Arkansas behind him?
Most of it, yes. Most of it, yes.
Do you work in Arkansas?
Yes, I'm over the state of Arkansas, yes.
And you think we have it tied up?
Well, here's what I would say. Like I said, they told me he's not electable at the beginning, so anyway, I don't care. And look how well he's doing now, and everywhere I go, I don't know the polls show it or not, but everywhere I go, I cannot tell you how many people actually are for Cruz. We do have to keep working, keep talking to people.
Which states, if we have it tied up in Arkansas, and everybody I talk to backs him, and if they don't, I kill them. No.
That's one way to do it. I'm joking.
Which states around us do you feel that he really needs help, and what can we do?
Yeah, let me go with the what can we do. You know, he's been the man's brilliant. Alan Dershowitz is a Harvard law professor and liberal Harvard law professor, said that Ted Cruz is off the charts brilliant. They're saying that this is the best campaign that has ever been run. They liken it to Reagan, only they say it exceeds Reagan's campaign. You know, he started this, what is called the SEC tour. If you don't follow sports, you don't know what that means, but that means the southern states. What we did last year in Arkansas made a difference in the political landscape. We changed our elections to March 1st, the primary. We changed the primary to March 1st. Used to, by the time it got to Arkansas, what we did didn't matter. We felt disenfranchised. Well, now we matter. We've seen so many candidates already come through Arkansas. Now, Cruz has sent his father here multiple times, which, by the way, January 22nd, he will be coming back. Rafael Cruz will be coming back. And the first time that I went to an event, it was a Southern Leadership Conference, that I was going to listen to Ted Cruz. I was going to get to meet him in person. He did what was right for our country instead of what was right for him. He stayed in Washington because there was a vote that he had to vote on. Unlike some other candidates. I didn't get to meet him. However, and he was supposed to be the keynote speaker. His father was the keynote speaker. I was ready to vote for him. He's that good. His father, when you hear Rafael Cruz, you understand why Ted Cruz has the passion he has. Okay, so he's been very smart in his campaign in doing this southern tour and making us part of the election process to get the momentum going. What we can do is ignore he's unelectable, ignore the polls. All right, the polls, by the way, they only really matter the last 2 weeks, because that's when they have to true their numbers. Because if they don't true their numbers the last 2 weeks, then they don't get any jobs in the future. Okay? It's all the dog, the tail wagging the dog up until that point. So when you see that, so-and-so is in the lead and he's going to trounce, that's not the case. A lot of who the leader right now in the Republican primary, a lot of what he's appealing to, and I know there's people in this room that are for the leader, the current polled leader. He's appealing to people who aren't going to go vote. They're not involved. They're not informed. They are, the mob that just yell and holler and wave their pitchforks, but they're not going to make it to the polls. There's no doubt in my mind every person in this room is going to make it to the poll. And the people that you have influence on, the circle of influence that you have, will make it to the polls. So you have to educate yourself. You have to be informed. You have to know where to go get the information. Ted Cruz put out a book this last year called A Time for Truth. It's phenomenal. It's a lesson in the Constitution. It gives the history of his father and why his father is so passionate about these things, why his father dictated to him the path that he was going to go on in his life. All right? And there's websites, tedcruz.org, the 5 agencies that he said he wants to abolish. I didn't remember those, but I knew where to go find them so that I could study it and so that I could share that with you. You have to do that. You have to get out of your comfort zone. When you would rather be watching Andy Griffith or the bowl game, you need to get online and go do some research. There's 25 other agencies that he wants to cut back on or abolish. There's several things that he wants to do. His first day in office, the very first day in office, he said, the very first day, that he will rescind every unconstitutional executive action taken during the Obama administration. Now, the fact that I can say that, and that I can articulate that, and that y'all can clap to that, that's all well and good. But if you can't share that with your friends and family, then he will not get elected. You have to be able to articulate that to your friends and family as you sit at those dinner tables, as you are in your church. You need, every one of you who go to church, you need to have a voter registration table set up in the back of the church. That is not illegal. Have a voter registration table set up. Have the cards there ready to go. Okay? You have to educate yourself. TedCruz.org is a great place. Facebook is a great place if you friend her, especially because she posts a lot of information.
Neil, hand the mic to our program director, Myra Davis.
Thank you. Hot Springs Village is the largest retirement community in the United States now. They're saying in the world.
Myra?
Oh, I'm sorry. So how can we get Ted Cruz to come to Hot Springs Village?
That's a hard one. Between now and the election, we may see him back in Arkansas one more time. And he has to be very strategic and look at where he can get the most bang for his buck. This area is predominantly conservative. Northwest Arkansas is predominantly conservative. Northeast Arkansas is a split. Central Arkansas is more liberal. Southeast Arkansas is more liberal. And so he has to go where he can get the most bang for his buck. The other thing is, he has to be smart about where he spends his time across the country. Because Arkansas really, yes, we do matter, but there are others that have more electoral pull than we do. So we don't even know where Raphael's coming next. Yeah, the campaign decides where he goes to. We can give suggestions, and we have. And then his statisticians and his people who are much smarter than me, they look at where they can, accomplish the greatest amount. So between now and the primary, I can't even really answer that question. Between now and March, yeah, we can request.
Okay.
One more question.
Well, we have 111, we have 3 here. Just see if we can be real quick as we're right into the
This
time.
is not a question. It's something that I would like to tell you about Ted Cruz. He came to Little Rock several months ago, and I had a grandmother that came from Alabama. Her children brought her, flew her here because they were afraid she would drive somewhere further than what she should go. She had 2 little granddaughters with her, and one of them, I took her under my wing, and then the other one came a little bit later. And he was about to get on his bus, which he should have gotten on about 25 minutes before that. And all these people kept coming, big adults kept coming to him. And I had these 2 little children. And all of a sudden, I tippy-toed and I hollered, "Ted." And he tippy-toed up, and I pointed down. And I want you to know he parted the way. And he went to these 2 children, stooped down, and just talked to them and talked to them, talked to them. So his love for children is great. It's about us going to vote, but I want you to know his love for children is really great. And that says something about the man.
Okay, the time is fleeting. There you go.
How is Ted Cruz going to capture the millennials who have already been indoctrinated to mindless?
And let's take 2 questions. And your question?
Yes.
Oh, no? Okay.
He actually has created a millennial leadership program. And here in the state of Arkansas, we have a really good friend who she is brilliant and invaluable to what we do. Her name is Dr. Jennifer Gifford Helms. She is a professor at ATU. Her son goes to Harding, and his name is Luke Helms. He is the president of or the director of the Millennials for Arkansas. And so they have done that. They set this up in each state where they are going on to university campuses and they are outreaching to the younger generation and educating them. At the Liberty Conference, one of the best speakers that we had there was Bill Whittle, that talks about economics. And when young millennials who mom and dad are still paying for everything, they don't understand the impact. And so all these socialist ideals, they sound really nice until you start having to pay the bills. And when you start paying the bills, it matters. But if we can give little snippets of information, the Prager University, through social media, these millennials are reaching out and they're putting, Walter Williams does a little 5-minute economics 101 about, how capitalism is actually morally superior to socialism. And it's just a 5-minute little snippet. And through social media, these millennials for Ted Cruz are posting this information and sharing it with their friends and getting this information out there.
The millennials are teaching the millennials.
We were talking about the millennials. For Christmas, my two of my grandchildren came from College Station. They went to Texas A&M to listen to Ted Cruz. And the reason they came is they asked me, said, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I said, "All I want is your time." And I said, if you can, come here, come to Little Rock, and we're going to go to the rally. And they had the best time in their lives. And the thing that impressed me the most is that they've taken that with them to College Station. And I said, you have to use that information Now you know what it's all about, and it was a wonderful experience. And it made the best Christmas that I could hope for.
I just have a comment to make. You know, you may not want to, but you can influence your children and your grandchildren. They need to know what you think. And I did that with my kids recently, and they didn't like it, but I did plant the idea in their mind that the socialism is killing this country.
I'll go back to that too.
Well, okay, and we need to adjourn, but a minor disclaimer that the Hot Springs Village Tea Party has a policy that we do not officially, as a group, endorse any candidate. Every citizen is encouraged to the fullest extent that they care to support the candidates that they like and to participate, and all are welcome here. And next meeting is February 2nd. That will be 14 days before early voting starts. Tim, I think, will be here. I think Ralph Eds will be here, and his opponent Larry Rainey, I think, and
Richard and Les?
yeah.
Richard Mitt.
So people who have contested races in the primary that are for this area will be here, and I want to encourage you to do that. Know that that meeting, that opportunity, is only 2 weeks away to your first opportunity to early vote. Starting February 16th is the beginning of early voting, and then the final date to vote in the primary for Arkansas is March 1. Thank you. We're adjourned.